Hi guys, it's Brad from Tactical Archery UK. Today I'm just going to be going through some basic crossbow safety and maintenance tips, do's and don'ts, and show you how to safely and effectively use your crossbow without damaging yourself or the crossbow. I am going to be using a recurve crossbow in this video, but some of these steps do apply to a compound crossbow. I'm going to show. Okay, so the first safety tip I'm going to go through, and probably one of the most important to prevent damage to your crossbow, is not dry firing it. And what a dry fire is essentially shooting the crossbow without a bolt in, because if you shoot this without a bolt in, all that energy will get transferred to the limbs here, and 9 times out of 10 the limbs will snap because there just isn't, that energy needs to go somewhere, and that's why you load a bolt in there, so that energy can be transferred to the bolt and shot forward. Shooting a crossbow without a bolt in there can also damage the string and just cause so many problems for the crossbow, and it's also dangerous for yourself in case the strings fly off or the limbs snap and they also fly off. So just remember, do not shoot a crossbow without a bolt in. The only time you should really be doing a dry fire is when you are assembling the string. So most crossbows you will need a crossbow stringer, which is essentially just a bit longer than this string, and that helps you put the string on for the first time, where you do actually need to shoot the crossbow. I do have another video on that, and I'll put a link down in the description below. Also, what you don't want to do is a partial dry fire, and what that is you may cock the crossbow and load the bolt, but the bolt might actually not be pushed all the way back in. Some people load the bolt, and when they hit this metal part here, they hear like a click and think that the bolt is loaded correctly when actually it isn't. So before you shoot, just make sure that the bolt is pushed all the way back in the rail and that the nock on the arrow is touching the rope, or as far as it can be, because if you don't do that, then there is a little gap between the nock and the string, and some of that energy will get transferred to the limbs, which can potentially also cause them to snap. Most modern crossbows do actually have an anti-dry fire system, meaning that it's always going to be in fire mode until you cock it. So when you cock it, that will actually engage the safety, meaning you can't pull the trigger. Usually you will hear a click when that goes in to let you know that it's been activated. And before you shoot the bolt, you will always have to push the safety latch forward and take it off the safety mode there, so you can actually fire it. You want to also make sure that you are using the correct bolt for the crossbow. This is usually specified on the manufacturer's website, on our website, or in the instruction manuals that you get with the bolt. This includes using the correct tips and the correct shafts, flights, and even nocks, because certain nocks do activate the anti-dry fire system here. So when you are loading a bolt into the crossbow, you want to make sure that the off-colored flight is face down, because that will ensure 100% accuracy every time. So this white vein is the off-colored one in this case, and that you want to make sure that's just face down in the rail. Another thing when loading bolts into your crossbow as well is hold it at the end of the bolt here, like this, and then load it like that. So just in case the crossbow does accidentally fire, your fingers won't be in the way of the string, and the bolt will just go through your fingers like that. You might get some damage because of the flights, but that's better than having your whole hand caught in this dangerous area. So the next tip is to do with cocking your crossbow, and I would always recommend using a cock and rope, which looks like this, because if you try and cock this with your hands, although you might have good intentions and good coordination on both arms, one hand will always be pulling harder than the other one, which causes an uneven draw, and over time that can affect the limbs if you're putting more pressure on one side to the other. So I would always recommend using a cock and rope, and I'll quickly show you how to cock a crossbow using a cock and rope now. Most modern crossbows these days do have a groove in the back end of the rail, so you can thread the string through like this and ensure an even pull, just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about using string wax and rail lube to maintain your crossbow. Most sort of premium crossbows are provided with this wax, but they might not be provided with the lube. And what this does is help maintain your string, because over time it can become quite stretched and the fibers might start tearing away, which means you will need to replace them. but you can help it last longer if you do wax it correctly. And some manufacturers do recommend waxing it after a certain amount of shots. This particular crossbow says to wax it after every 5 to 10 shots. It's quite important to take notice of this though, because some manufacturers don't actually recommend that you wax certain parts of the crossbow, such as the server here, but that does all depend on the manufacturer, so make sure to check their website just to ensure that you're waxing and lubing the correct places. So on this particular crossbow, I'm actually just going to wax the string where you can see the threads there, and I am just going to put a bit of lube on the rail itself here, so I'll show you how to do that now. These crossbows do produce quite a lot of heat and friction along the rail here when firing, so it is actually quite important to keep them waxed and lubed, otherwise the string can start fraying and tear away. So what you want to do is just rub this wax all along the string there, just get a nice coating on there. It's just a bit like lipstick, this stuff. And once you've got a nice coating on there, what you want to do is use the heat from your fingers just to rub that in the string there. And what this does is it actually seeps into the fibers of the string, so that it keeps them nice and tightly compact and will last longer. So some manufacturers do give you a sort of guideline, sort of 5 to 10 shots when you need to wax your string, but to be honest, if you just give your string a feel and it feels really dry, then that's when I would recommend waxing it. For this particular crossbow, I'm not going to actually wax the serving string here, which is that different thread that's wrapped around it vertically. What I'm actually going to do for this is just use a bit of rail lube. I've got some Excalibur X lube here, and just put a couple of drops on the rail itself here. Just on both sides there. And once I've got a nice coating on there, I'm just going to use my fingers just to rub that all along, all the way to the back there. And what this is going to do is reduce the friction of the string when you shoot the crossbow, which in turn will also reduce the heat, and that will make your string last much longer than if you were not to wax this. Okay, so this next safety tip applies to just general awareness when using a crossbow and shooting it. Never point your crossbow in jest, and what that means is never just point it at someone as a joke. I know that kind of seems obvious and silly, but you might get a bit excited sometimes and not even be aware of how you're holding the crossbow. Another thing is, when you're holding your crossbow, if you're not about to shoot it, then I would always recommend keeping your finger like this and off the trigger, because you don't want to accidentally discharge the crossbow and have it accidentally go into someone or hit an object or your car, for example. Another thing is, when you're shooting the crossbow, always be aware of where your left hand is placed, because some people hold crossbows like this or like this, and that's obviously very bad, because if your fingers are in the way when you shoot, then you're going to definitely be taking a trip to the hospital. This has got a nice protective rail on this crossbow, so when I hold this crossbow, I always know that my hand is protected and not sitting above the rail in the line of the string. So before you shoot, always make sure that your thumb and your fingers are always below the string, because you definitely don't want to be getting in the way of that. So when you're shooting at targets, always make sure that you have a suitable backdrop, whether it's a netting or a big board of wood. Always make sure that you are not just going to be shooting into big open land. We're quite lucky here because all the fields around us, there's nobody in there for miles, and we do have sensible backdrops here. Another tip that not many people think about is the scope being above the rail here. So when you're shooting the crossbow, you're looking through the scope, but where your crossbow might be pointing is going to be different to the scope. So for example, if I use this table here, if I am aiming at a table, you might drop down a bit and you can still see through the scope and see your target, but the crossbow might actually be below the table. So you just want to make sure that you've got a clear area around you, a clear perimeter to shoot. That also applies with these limbs. If you can see how wide these are now, when I cock this back, they're going to be a bit more compact, and I might just forget that I have a tree to my left or right, and when I shoot that, you don't want the limbs hitting the tree. So this has just been a quick video on some basic safety and maintenance tips. If I've missed anything off, leave a comment below and I'll make sure to include that in another video. If you have any other suggestions or even your own safety tips, please let me know below, because they'll be really helpful for other people watching this. Please like, comment, subscribe, and if you want to see any other cool videos, please let me know. We can get all the newest crossbows, bows, so if there's a specific crossbow or bow you want to see, then let me know. Thanks.